Welcome, 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 welcome to another episode of the Mr. Mindful Minute podcast, where we touch on different things of different areas of life, on how we can go from a nothing place to a something place. And today, we are touching on the aspect of mental limitations. Yes, mental limitations, and you may be wondering, why mental limitations? Why are we talking about the capabilities of our brain and the limits that we as individuals put on to ourselves? Yes, I said it. The limitations we put onto ourselves. Why do I say that? Think about all of the beautiful things that has been created, from these cellular devices to computers to cameras, everything, to cars to uh, printers, airplanes, all of these beautiful devices, right? Things as simple as uh, fishing bait, right? We have to understand that these are all ideas that was formulated in somebody's brain. And once the idea was formulated in somebody's brain, they actually took the steps to create it. They had to remove a limiting belief in some way, shape, or form. Why? Because it had never been built before. They didn't know necessarily what it looked like. The only thing that they knew was that they saw something that was similar to it, and it was probably in nature. So think about it for a second. A car is actually made and developed from what a human body looks like. The engine is considered the heart. The transmission is considered the heart. The engine is considered the brain, right? Your headlights are your eyes, right? So the tires on the car is your limb. So look at it from this standpoint. Our brains are very, very big, but we tend to, as individuals, put limits on what we think we can or cannot do. Why do you have such a big brain if you're going to put so many limits on what you can do? There is nothing out there that you cannot create and formulate a blueprint or idea for. Nothing. You actually need to learn to accept problems, because what problems do in our life, they sharpen our ability to be critical thinkers. And every single thing that is created or designed or even improved on, it is because someone was thinking critically on how it can be solved. Everything. So when we look at it from that standpoint, man, I have such a big brain, but am I putting limiting ideas on my capability? Am I putting limiting ideas on what I can do? If you are, today's the day that you stop. Why is today the day you stop? Because the moment that your brain receives some information is the very moment that your brain starts to look for ways to actually make it work. It looks for ways to work towards it. Your brain looks for ways to see how you can actually get something to be achieved. So our brains are very big, and our brains know, okay, There's no limit on my capabilities. The only limits are what we are conditioned to believe what we cannot do. And that usually comes in the form of what somebody else has told us that we couldn't do because they couldn't do. And so we then accepted what somebody else's limited ideas were and adapted them to be ours. Look at it from that standpoint. Somebody said, oh no, you're not going to be able to do that. You ever hear this? Somebody, you say, man, I want to get this such and such car. Man, you ain't going to be able to get no whatever, because I couldn't get that. When I tried to do this and I tried to, usually people tell you what you can't do from basis of what they have tried to do and they couldn't accomplish it. But when you have somebody that has achieved something, they usually say, oh, yeah, it's possible for you to do this, that, and the third. I know because I was able to achieve this. I was able to do that. It's no different than those limiting beliefs that somebody else have on themselves and they put it on us. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Come on. It ain't yours. That fear, that doubt, don't let somebody place what they have on them onto you. Just because they couldn't, just because they didn't see how they could, just because they didn't try, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. That doesn't mean that you can't, because you can if you continue to work towards it, because your brain has already started to be a critical thinker. Okay, what do I got to do in order for this to be achieved? What do I got to do in order for this to happen? It may be difficult because it is going to be a level of friction that is going to happen. And we know that friction can create a fire, but friction and pressure can also create a beautiful pearl. Fire under gold can actually take out the impurities of the gold, where it can now be its best form. Friction or pressure is what's applied to make a diamond. Listen, friction and pressure are something that can help us become critical thinkers. Every invention has been created because somebody was a critical thinker. How can I make this be improved? How can I make this work? How can I get this done? So look at it from this standpoint also. We have a big brain, but sometimes we have very small ideas. Stop thinking so small. You have a very, very big brain, which has very, very big capabilities. If you have such a big brain, you also have ideas that are in there that can be very big. So whatever idea that you thought of that was small, think about how you can enhance that idea times 10, times 20, times 100. Because if you say, okay, man, I need $1, and you get $1, you then say, how can I think about getting $10? How can I think about getting $100? How can I think about getting $1,000? It's the same thing when we use that to say, I have a big brain. Why do I have small ideas? I need to actually use my big brain to actually see how I can have bigger ideas. Now, what else do we have to understand? If we now have an idea in our mind, we have to actually probably write it down. Why do we need it to write it down? Because even though we have a very big brain, it is very easy for us to forget. because we have so many thoughts that circulate in our mind all of the time. One, you have subconscious thoughts of what your brain is just running in the background. Then you have conscious thoughts of what your brain is telling you you need to do right now. So you have the conscious thoughts of move your arms, blink your eyes, move your lips. Then you have subconscious thoughts of breathe in and out, blood circulating, heart beating. These are all subconscious thoughts that's running in the background. That's going to always constantly be going. Because the reason that they're subconscious thoughts, because you're doing them even when you're not in a conscious state. That's why they're subconscious thoughts. So write down, whenever you have an idea about something, whenever you have a thought about something, whenever you have a feeling about something, write it down. Write it down. Because I read something that said when you get a thought about something, you have about 3 seconds to actually act on it before the thought is transferred. So just like energy is transferred, the thought can transfer. You ever have a situation where you was thinking about something, or you had an idea of an invention about something, and you didn't work towards it, it came and it went, and the next thing you knew, this invention came out? You wonder why? Because that thought that came into your brain, you didn't act upon it, and the thought, just like energy, it transferred to somebody else. A lot of people don't realize that just like energy is transferred, thoughts are transferred as well. Ideas are transferred as well. This is why brainstorming is very good, because one thought can transfer to somebody else. You ever have a situation? Why do you think two people can be sitting engaged in a group conversation and then somebody finish their sentence? Because the very thing that you were thinking, somebody else, it could have transferred to somebody else and they thought it as well and they finished your sentence. Yeah, some things are kind of like probability. I kind of felt like I knew the next thing that they were going to say. Transfer of thought, transfer of ideas. So this is why you should write stuff down. This is why you should actually act upon it. That's you acting upon it, writing it down. So if you have a brand, right, or a company, say for example, you are a sneakerhead. Shout out to my brother that's a sneakerhead, right? Listen, he be dropping some dope stuff. So Sam be putting out all this information about sneaker content. Okay. Well, if he has this idea about sneaker content, he may also now have an idea about creating and designing a sneaker. Well, if he has the idea about creating and designing a sneaker and he don't write it down, he don't try to send it out to somewhere or something like that, guess what? That thought may go to somebody else. And then now they might do. So we have to remember when we have a thought in our mind, so even if you are, say you're about to go to sleep and a thought comes to your mind real quick, put it in your phone, write it down. That way you can come back to it later. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you haven't thought about something or idea, write it down, put it in your phone so you can come back to it later. Because we have a very big brain, but we can easily forget. And we have to understand that that's kind of crazy. And I'm going to tell you why that's crazy. Because it's stuff that you can remember from when you were a young child. It's things that my daughter talked about that she remembered from when she was like 5. And she's 16 now. It's stuff that I remember from when I was a teenager. And I'm 35 right now. And I'm talking stuff that I can remember when I was like 13. Okay? So understand we have a very big brain. We can remember a lot, but we easily forget. All right. Remember this as well. The moment that your brain started to critically think and formulate an idea about a problem and how it can solve it, your brain also started formulating a blueprint on how it can how it could look like if you focus on it long enough. You can create the blueprint of how to do stuff. A lot of times we get so frustrated and we get so flustered, right? Because we're like, oh well, how am I going to figure out how to do this? How do you figure out how to do that? You might need to do something to give you some mental clarity. You might need to quiet all the subconscious things in your brain so you can actually have clarity. So what's one of the ways that we can have clarity? Breathing techniques. In slowly, out slowly. Consciously think about breathing instead of it becoming a subconscious thought. That's what helps us to get mental brain clarity. Listening to 432 hertz frequency music. That music actually quiets the brain. The frequency of it makes the brain patterns actually slow down, and not slow down in a bad way. It makes them slow down in a synchronized pattern, which will actually help us to think more clearly. What helps us to have more mental clarity is when we actually just sit and exist for a second. We don't think about what we have to do, what we're going to do, what we didn't do, what we did. Just exist for a moment. Look at yourself in your mind's eye and focus and imagine seeing something actually in your body. So imagine seeing your heart beating, pumping up and down, up and down. And when you do this, it is giving your brain something to center on that is very simple. And so by doing that, that actually helps us to quiet our brain and helps us. That is some tips and tricks that we can actually do to get rid of that mental uh, stress or to have clarity in our brain for a moment. That's very, very helpful for us. So I hope this was helpful to you. Remember that mindset is very, very important. Remember that you have greatness in you, and it is a mindset. All right, so now it's time for one of my moments. I can remember one of my moments when I first flew on an airplane. Man, listen, I got on one of those small planes. I was like, all right, I'm gonna make my first flight to be a very short flight. So one of the shortest flights that I can find from Philadelphia was to Erie, Pennsylvania, which it was all of like maybe 30 minutes. And I went to go see somebody that I knew, one of my friends, and that was one of the most scariest events in my life. Because it wasn't a very, very big plane. It was one of those propeller planes, right? And it was just like I'm on the plane, and even though it was like only 30 minutes, it was like turbulence at the beginning, turbulence in the middle, and turbulence going towards the end. And I remember being on a plane and the lady like went to sleep. She was just like, I'm so scared of planes, I gotta go to sleep. I was like, it's only about a half an hour. She was like, I don't care. I'm so scared. I was like, okay. And she went to sleep. And this, like, we hit some crazy turbulence. And I promise you, this lady woke up in the middle of the turbulence, like, oh my God. Listen, I understand because I was holding on to that seat, like, I hope we don't go down. That was one of the most scariest moments in my life. I was this close to never flying on an airplane again, and then somebody was like, "Yo, you got to get on one of the bigger planes. You don't feel the turbulence." So I think after that, I probably was on like maybe like one or two other small airplanes. It's big airplanes for me. They was after that moving forward. So every plane that I've been on after that was like a 757 or a 321, if you know about airplanes. Uh, Things like that, a 320. I was in the airline industry for some 15 plus years. And so I know about airplanes. And so it's just like, yo, I promise you, you can't feel anything. So if you're gonna fly on an airplane, make it be a bigger airplane and not one of the smaller ones like I did and got on a propeller airplane. So this was just one of my moments with me. And so remember, greatness is a thing.